Hello, and welcome to the stream. Today we're gonna do our long awaited lore stream. I think it's been almost a month now or two, or maybe.
Yeah.
They were originally doing it. But we have two lovely people. We have Nicolette and we have James, and you guys are both narrative designers. I mean, you obviously do brand stuff as well.
I write all the things.
She writes all of it, and I'm very happy that she's in her company because. Is it echoing? Oh, is the other mic not muted yet?
Yeah, the button is muted.
Like here? Sorry.
Yeah, there's only one.
Really?
Only one channel.
Why are we echoing?
We.
Should do like
It's fine now.
entertainment.
Okay, it's fine?
You're
Okay.
saying
But we
echo
didn't
gone?
touch anything. Okay, weird. Okay, that's really weird. Anyway, so I'll start over. Thank you guys for the long-awaited lore stream. We have two lovely guests. We have Nicolette and we have James, and they are both our narrative designers. And Nicolette also helps us with all the text that goes on social media and the blogs, and I'm very helpful. I think that is definitely a luxury to have because oftentimes it's something that we have to write ourselves, and she can like make sure that it actually is correct. So it's really nice. But today we're going to talk about the lore. Now obviously we had a lore Q&A a little while back, and obviously not a lot of people know about the lore yet. I mean, they've seen bits of pieces, but they don't know the whole backstory yet. So we're going to have talk about some of the general lore of Hunt and some other stuff that we have released over the time. And in the end, we're also going to do some questions. So yeah, let's just start a little bit about the history, or like what is the lore behind Hunt?
I think you should tell them big picture story.
Yeah, I mean, we have a big evil which has like come into the world and is quite disruptive. I think what's really interesting to us is against this backdrop how we have a lot of human conflict and human kind of drivers and motivators in the story. We took a decision pretty early on that we didn't want this to be about, you know, a homogeneous force of good against one of evil, but what we've ended up with is maybe, you know, something which has been quite disruptive, and then in that chaos you have interhuman conflicts which have emerged, and yeah, that's really what we're setting out to explore.
Yeah, so we have like the big bad guy who's messing everything up. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
It might happen by accident, but should I try not to?
No, it's fine. I mean, they see me
They've
play
heard it all.
Hunt, so
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I try, there's no way I cannot like not say it.
All right. I'll try to keep it PG. But so we've got this big bad in the background, but the stories that we tell are all like smaller stories, like how individual people are trying to deal with this weird stuff that's happening, and so there's so much opportunity to tell a bunch of different stories through that, and that's what we've explored, and that's why there's so much to unlock in all the books that have been going.
Yeah, because we have obviously the Book of Monsters, and then now also the Book of Weapons with the new update for 1.0. Maybe some of you already have unlocked some information, but I know that there's already some people that have the entire Book of Monsters completely unlocked and translated. Thank you for that. That's insane. But yeah, just in general, how did you guys come up with like a bit of the setting for like the lore for Hunt? I mean, did it change? I'm actually curious because I don't even know that. Like, how much did it change, for example, with the old concept when Austin worked on it to where we are now?
Well, I joined the narrative team about 2.5 years ago, so you might be able to speak better to this. James was on the team a bit earlier than I.
Maybe, yeah. I guess in the original concept it was the whole look and visual feel of the game was a bit more cartoony, and I think in the shift away from that it definitely got a lot grittier, and alongside that it got maybe a little bit more historic. So yeah, I think we, you know, would have to give credit to the other guys who are no longer with us for moving a lot of stuff.
They're not dead. We didn't kill them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they moved it in a lot of directions, and then since I've been involved, we've definitely driven towards this darker side, and we wanted to have something which was more, less focused on a big bad that you were kind of working together to defeat, and maybe what was a more realistic situation is that something happens and then people try and exploit that for personal gain.
Yeah, we really started from, like, when I joined the narrative team, it was kind of explained to me, like, this backstory of the big bad guy and disruptive force was explained to me, and then we wanted to weave actual historical events into the story, and then just think about how people in this situation would react and what kind of weird stuff would happen and fun stuff to read about. So it just kind of grew organically from there.
Yeah, so you say the big bad is more the big picture of it. So you guys have already mentioned this somewhere in the Discord, like it's like a disease type thing. Can you maybe
It's kind of like, I would refer to it kind of like as a possession that functions like a disease, but like putting concrete terms to that feels... Yeah.
I mean, what I'm really excited about in this time is that you have the kind of science emerging as a conflicting field, and you have religion phasing out of culture, so you have a bit of a turning point, and at this time you have a lot of competing explanations for phenomena, and I think just to be historically relative, we'd really have to bring those things in, and you have to have some people who are looking at this through like a religious lens, and some people are scientific, and some people other variants, and I think within that you have a lot of competing ideas. So I think it would take some of the interest out if we didn't like pay homage to that and kind of look at it and kind of how it can manifest as various things, because I think a lot of us are familiar with like zombies as a genre and zombies as a concept. So do we, is that the starting point for how we get there, or is the more interesting thing kind of discussing around it?
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back, I think we mostly kind of explored the stories based on like looking at different perspectives. Like this weird thing has happened, and I guess we can all relate to that even now. Something weird has happened, and everybody reacts to it in a totally different way and sees it as something totally different, and nobody really knows what it is. And that's a really fun thing to explore, because you have this one concept that just looks so different from all these different angles, so you can really make a lot out of it.
And people obviously can still, as you say, interpret it differently as well, even when it is actually in the game, for example. But it's also interesting because, like, obviously a lot of games, or in general anything, tells a specific story where you go through the lore, as in storytelling, by actually going through whatever is happening.
Linear.
Exactly. Yeah, linear. So what was actually the choice? Because I mean, I understand it's obviously because we are also an online game, so like story, it's not really a story PvE experience, which I know a lot of people still really like the idea of. But what is like? I mean, maybe like what exactly? How do we apply that for our game?
So we knew from the beginning that as we were writing, there was no way for us to know what order anybody would read this story. So we knew that as we were writing. We knew it would be small chunks of story, and we needed to somehow figure out how to make it hopefully be interesting to read it no matter what order you read it in. So it had to have like an element of mystery and like puzzle solving involved in it, because you're putting together all the pieces. So the pieces, as we made them, are all found documents that have been compiled. And so in theory, no matter what order you read them in, you can start to piece them together, and everyone will have a different experience, and we hope a good one. But because every single person will experience it differently, it's a bit of a lottery.
Is that also not really challenging to like make a story conveyed that even if you wouldn't read anything in a specific linear version, or if you would read anything, that you still get the whole feel or idea of it?
I found it challenging. I mean, the ultimate judge of that will be the players, how
how
they find it, because I mean, we wrote things in a linear fashion, and we wrote them in the chunks that they would be put in the books in, but we know in our heads what the linear chronology is.
Exactly.
And so that'll be really interesting to see how people react to it. With the Book of Monsters, it was a bit smaller, so I think people could get through it all. and put it together more quickly. The Book of Weapons is enormous, and so I'm really curious to see how people experience that.
How much comparison does the Book of Weapons have compared to the Book of Monsters in like
It's
information, or like
2.5 times the word length ish.
Maybe.
Maybe.
It's similar length overall. I think it's much more spread out though across the items.
Yeah, but it's at least double the size.
Yeah, it's big.
It's
It's
pretty
big.
Yeah, have to double check.
I also realized that I did not even share this, but Nico's also the person who sang the songs for Hunt
jeez.
that you guys all really love. I don't know why I didn't mention it before. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't say that. She's the one who made all these really awesome songs that everyone was really, really liking. I just wanted to point
Me
that out.
and the amazing people in the audio team.
Yeah, that's true. It was a team effort, but I mean,
Absolutely.
it is everyone really, really. I've mentioned it before, but did I mention it on stream today? Well, I'm just saying. But yeah, you already mentioned a little bit that you guys take inspiration from like real life things. So what were some of your like writing inspirations? But also, I'm actually curious. Besides that, just before I forget to ask it, what is, for example, the craziest story that you read?
That we've written.
Yeah, like no, that you read that you're like, oh, that's really interesting inspiration because it's so crazy or so out of whack or weird or strange.
I mean,
There's a lot.
there is really a lot, and like most of the crazy stuff I feel like that we've read in research has been nonfiction, which makes it even more
Yeah.
ridiculous. 'Cause you're
That's
like,
why
"Wait,
I was
that
curious.
really
That's why I
happened?"
was curious. Like, what were you read that you were like,
I mean,
What?
I don't know. Do we talk about
Yeah.
the meat shower now?
Yeah. I mean, the last one we found was at the Kansas or the Kentucky meat shower. Was it? Which state was it?
I think it was Kentucky
Yeah.
meat shower. This is a historical thing that happens. It has like an encyclopedia entry. And yeah, please describe the
I mean,
Kentucky
there was a
meat shower.
Town in
1896.
Kentucky, yeah. And one day it rained meat on the town.
and this is how KFC now.
Maybe, yeah. Anyway, so all the locals are like, what are we going to do with all this meat? And then a few of them were eating it. And they were like, well, this is, deer. And other people were like, this is beef. I think some people think that vultures threw it up, like buzzards were flying over the town and vomited. And you have to think, like, that's pretty bad luck to be in the town.
How do you
where-
get that many vultures? Like,
Yeah.
But how
how
much meat are we talking about? Like,
It
Yeah.
doesn't really specify, like, was it buckets of meat? Was
because
it,
if you think
Yeah.
of meat shower, it's at least like more than 10.
It was
pieces.
enough that
Yeah.
people who observed it went over and, like, tasted it. They, like, picked it
I
up
mean,
off
like-
the like, who does that? This is amazing.
I mean,
I
I
love this
just love
story.
like the human aspect of that. Like people are just like, well, let's try it.
Yeah.
Fire up the barbecue.
And the possible reason was vultures vomiting. I don't know.
That's the most
It-
credible reason. Like
Yeah,
there's
true,
other
there's other
speculations.
But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we end up reading all day, and that
Yeah.
kind of all gets woven in.
And
into
what,
the
and what
lore.
other inspiration did you get, or what other things did you take inspiration from?
I mean, big shout out, of course, to Cormac McCarthy, whose Blood Meridian is like the most fucked up Western book I've ever read, the most violent and like beautifully written at the same time, but a lot of inspiration there. I personally have read a lot of dime novels, which were
Mhm.
like the most popular fiction of the period to read, to take inspiration, and they're actually great. They're just like these. I thought they would be a lot more cheesy, but they're just like
Mhm.
kind of these really fun action adventure things, and tons of them are archived online, so you can. There's no way to get any of them in print anymore, but
Oh,
they're
okay.
archived
Are
in
they
a lot of
from that
libraries.
time as
Yeah,
well?
exactly.
Okay, yeah,
like
yeah.
between I don't know 1870 and 1920, you can
Yeah.
find a lot of them, and those have been big inspirations for me. I mean,
Yeah, I really like all the newspapers and stuff. Like everything is now available for free online, and it's really interesting to think 20 years ago you'd have to go to an archive.
Yeah.
But as well in these newspapers, like there's just the bizarrest news which they have in there. Like
it's incredible.
Like they have these they have basically what are memes in these days, but they're like anecdotes from around.
Mm-hmm.
And you get some of them which is like, yeah, this guy was falling off a roof, and while he was falling, he told his work friend that he owed 25 cents to the grocer and to tell his wife, I'm sorry.
Like
And
that
then-
was in the newspaper.
Yeah, and then he dies. That was like his last thought was like, oh, gotta get the grocer that 25 cents. Like, yeah, I mean, but it's just a lot, and it's strange. Was also reading a lot of contemporary reporting about like plagues and stuff.
Oh,
like
yeah, yes.
in 1896 in San Francisco, the bubonic plague broke out. Like there was like the Black Death in San Francisco in Chinatown, and they just walled it off, and they were just like, yeah, this isn't a problem. Like that's
is a
not really
problem.
happening. And so we were thinking like, yeah, how could this happen, and how could something like this break out, and what would the country do? And it's like, well, no one would believe it, and then people would just cover it up, and it would be not a problem at all. So
And if you take those examples that you see, they just wall it off, forget about it.
Yeah. These people did not exist. And then I'm curious, do you guys take from everywhere in America, or like even other places in the world, or are you more focused on the Louisiana area, or?
I mean, I'd say we're pretty focused on the Louisiana area, especially because we've like wrapped a lot of really historical events in it. But I mean, inspiration comes from everywhere. But
I mean, there were also like villages which were deep in the bayou, which were set up by like migrants from Manila and stuff, and they were never integrated into Louisiana, and these things just faded away and got flooded and destroyed by storms. So it's also an area where these kind of little collections of hunts and shanty towns which were being disrepair were just pretty prolific, and you look at the historical record, and it's like a frontier area. It's not mapped, it's not recorded.
Yeah, leaves a lot of room for the imagination to
Yeah.
run wild, basically.
And do you take more fiction or non-fiction inspiration, or is it different for because I hear you say more a bit more fiction? At least when I just hear what you just said, like more novels, and you more non-fiction, or is it both like equal? Or
I mean, for me, it's both. I read fiction obsessively as well, and take a little bit from everywhere. Even if it's just like a style of writing or some small sentence, some idea in there. So a lot of fiction and nonfiction actually.
Yeah, I think I think it's good to get a balance, and like if we're say helping out doing some research for a map or something, it's like, okay, what's like theoretically possible, and then you kind of steering on the non-fiction edge, and then to actually produce stuff, it's reading this. Also journals and stuff which have been saved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what people were writing for themselves in this time.
I have read a lot of 1890. Wow, when was it published? It might have been in the 1880s, but there's like a medical textbook that was published around that time that I have read way too much of, just to kind of get into the mindset of doctors of that time, because for us now it's kind of a grotesque mindset sometimes. I mean, some of it is perfectly normal stuff, but some of it you're just like, and then you did what? And then you sawed off the what? Yeah, so medical textbook from the time really
Was
helps.
this the medical anomalies one or the textbook?
Not the anomaly. Yeah, this was just the textbook.
Because the anomalies one was really cool, because we there was a writer, Lafcadio Hearn, who was like a journalist at the time, and he was really responsible for like drawing attention to Arcadian and Creole culture in New Orleans, and he was like really one of the first people to be writing like about food, which is now everyone watches food journalism. But yeah, he was doing that and a lot of travel journalism, and he kind of was attributed with being really important in like creating New Orleans as we kind of imagine it today. And he was also friends with this guy, I forget his name, and we found this other textbook of like medical anomalies through the ages, of just like he had compiled all these weird examples of like bizarre medical things like growths and
illustrated as well, if I recall
combustion.
correctly.
yeah, weirdly illustrated. And then there were also friends, like this guy who made this thing and this other one, they're like going to dinner and hanging out, and it's like, what is going on in this time,
The amount of times when we had decided to put something historical into the story, and then we're researching further, and everything just all started coming together in this weird like conspiracy theory way. Like it kept it's happened a lot where it's like, what is this?
We're discovering things that we're not supposed to be known.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why all of our streams keep having to get canceled. Someone's trying to stop us.
Yeah. And what is then the process? Or for example, you say when you guys are working on a new map, how does the lore, in what ways do you guys get involved and at what point, and what is the process that you guys usually have?
Do you want to start it?
Yeah, I guess there's all the environment guys are doing their own research and come with a lot of their own ideas and
Concept as well.
look at some other sources and like throw some things back and forth, and I think it's quite subtle how some of these things actually appear in game, and I think it's very much we kind of provide some thoughts on it. And then later on, once things are a little bit more solidified, we're coming in and then saying, okay, what's like, there's this church building, what kind of like design is this church? Is this like a Baptist church or something? Mm-hmm. So it kind of, there's kind of a pre-research phase, and then they like build everything, and then we kind of are looking back at that and reviewing. Some things are a little bit more laid as a foundation. I think as well, just generally the atmosphere that a lot of these areas produce, how things have been fortified, that's something which we've kind of come to an agreement on how this should work as a space, and how this can just tell a general story of what was going on here, what were the last days of this area when it was still human.
There's definitely a lot of back and forth, sitting down, talking about things, going away, emailing a bunch, coming back until you finally find the thing that kind of feels for everybody like it hits the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I also think a lot of people don't even maybe think about it that much, that is already like lore of like everything that's involved in that. So that's actually really nice, like understand a bit better, how that comes to play. Yeah. Because obviously, like we have the stories and we have the little monsters, but that's a completely different way of like feeding the lore.
Exactly. Yeah. External.
So yeah, just making the lights on. Let me see. Yeah, what have we changed or added to the story specifically thanks to the community feedback? If you need the paper.
Well, one thing that happened for sure was with one of the Twitter stories we did about Dr. Reed was we noticed people were talking about that one quite a bit.
Yeah, that was actually quite a long time. I think that was even we started it before release, I think. Or was it?
It was either before or right after. I don't remember the exact time.
I think before the beta or something.
It was a long time ago, and it was just like, okay, we can release some atmospheric lore this way, even though it won't be in the game for quite a while. And we did a bunch of those, and we kind of watched what people discussed the most, and that one people were really keen to spin theories around. So Dr. Reed got a bit more FaceTime in the game text than he probably would have otherwise, but we decided to make a point of mentioning more of his story than there. So that's one. Do you?
Some concrete examples. I think it's hard to differentiate because it's so much influence, and I think we have a lot of areas which we're like wanting to explore and develop, and also like make it concrete and put it in game. And so a lot of those things were very much like guided where the community interest is going. There's been some threads which we've left and then they haven't been taken up. So I think it's sometimes really hard to actually like pinpoint and say, well, we had this idea and then people said this and we did something different. I think a lot of it is kind of following the
sort of the stream of because we definitely pay attention to what people are talking about, what seems to interest them the most, and then that can guide us more generally.
So I mean, I'm actually curious, like, is there anything that you specifically put in that someone hasn't picked up, or that you never saw and noticed but you would accept, or like would expect that they did?
You mean like hidden around the world, or
I mean, like it could be anyway. I mean, obviously when it's hidden about the world, it's a lot less obvious. So.
Well, I mean, last that I checked, there was still some stuff in the world that people hadn't found, but I'm not sure. We've been really, really busy in the last month, so I haven't checked what environmental stuff people have found. I mean, there's so much still to unlock in the Book of Weapons, and I think once people have everything unlocked, they might start noticing connections to things in other places that didn't make sense
Think about
before.
it, yeah.
I
So-
think that's the main thing that lies ahead, all the connections that people will be able to make between everything when they have the whole.
Yeah, because will there be things in the book that give a hint to something that could be, for example, in the game? Like as in on the map or something that it like refers to things that they can find there also, or not directly, or
Yeah, well, I think one thing which we had on the roadmap and that was still in the process of developing is like the Book of Tales, like a more in-depth history. But we also need to, consider this. So yeah, I think some of that right now is kind of sitting in the background for a while, and maybe we'll get the chance to like look further into it. I think in the Book of Monsters and Book of Weapons, I'm not sure if that was. I think there's some, definitely. Like there's some
Yeah.
locations, yeah.
People
I mean,
will maybe
obviously,
like there's connections to maybe names of legendary weapons and stuff that maybe don't make sense yet, but will
okay.
some little more subtle things like that, sure.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I also saw that the sculptor's name was one of the things I got influenced by the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we'd given the big bad a
I think,
concrete
yeah.
name as of yet. We kind of referred to it as all sorts of different things.
I think we had some like firm ideas, and then I think there was a letter which was put in the case file, and that referred to it as the sculptor, and that wasn't really our like main thing we had in mind.
But it was, we had characters referring to it as different things.
But then that one was really taken up and carried forward, and then after a while it's like we started to refer to it as that, and that eclipsed it ourselves, and then we were like, well, would it make sense to change it now? So I think this
it's become the sculptor because that was just what the community took up. Like there were a couple of options in play in the lore, but that one just became standard because you guys used it, so you have a lot of power.
And I saw a few more things. Obviously, Roosevelt's daughter.
We can't talk about Roosevelt's daughter.
Yeah.
What's the next one on the list?
We'll write more about Soldier Walter.
Oh yeah, that was one thing. It was a while ago now, but some of the community members found some letters that we had hidden in one of the compounds and did like a video exploring them and stuff. And whenever we see that somebody takes that much interest in a character, we think, okay, like we have this huge long list of characters, but like mark that one, like put them up higher up the list as someone whose story we want to try to get into the game sooner than later. So yeah, that stuff does make a difference to us. We see it and we're like, okay, yeah, they like that one, so let's do that one.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking what else would be nice to talk about, because we had the Book of Weapons Thieves, but because the stream is obviously a little bit later, we don't really have the paper to go by. But
yeah, I mean, I guess people probably haven't unlocked the entire Book of Weapons yet. It's only been on the test server.
Yeah, exactly. They should have to try that. But I mean, you just said that they found like letters. So like how many places? Oh no, that was actually what I was thinking. So what happens with things? For example, I know probably one thing that I personally saw a lot was where people would mention the name on the graves.
Mm-hmm.
Then, because I know that you guys at first didn't have any specific lore for it, did you then decide to like potentially like write stuff for that, or are some stuff a mystery? Because like that was not per se related. That wasn't originated from lore perspective, but more from someone from game design or environmental.
Yeah, there's always like with environmental stuff, some of it's lore that we'll admit to. Some of it's lore that we'll leave a mystery, and sometimes it's an Easter egg.
We have definitely a few
So
Easter eggs. Yeah.
one
Yeah.
has to take that into consideration for sure.
I mean, I think specifically the one that you're thinking of was like Rest in Peace Joss or something.
Yeah.
And that was, Joss was a level designer for a lot of the Blanchett Graves area.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one was slipped in by level
Summer
design.
Quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just a Easter egg.
Yeah, I mean, there's many games that do stuff like that in general. So, I mean, it is interesting to see because like people pick up all those different things that they see on the map and they automatically suggest that everything might have lore, but like it doesn't have to.
Exactly, like
to mean something still. So it can be your own lore, the game lore.
I mean, I think as well, like there's a general atmosphere and like everyone is creating their own stuff as well. So just because it didn't necessarily come through an email from us doesn't mean that it's not like contributing to the world as a whole.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of kind of stories which would be a bit weird to clarify. Like there's one guy growing out of a tree or something. And I think that is, that's already doing its own thing. I think it would be kind of strange for us to come out and say, well, this was specifically this person.
I mean, I think for us conceptually it's important to leave some mystery in because it's half of fun.
Yeah.
At least for me in a game like this, like thinking about it and like what could it mean, and like I want some answers, and what we want to do is give some answers and leave some room for speculation, but with enough of a like idea of what's going on that people can actually.
And I mean, people
make
can even come up with their own ideas, right?
Exactly,
As you say,
yeah.
when everyone approaches something completely different, and I mean, it would be interesting to see what other people come up with. Because I think we had quite a while as well that someone wrote their own stories, I believe, as well.
In the beginning there was
it was
a little
very
bit of
beginning.
fanfiction.
Yeah, exactly, where people wrote fanfic. So, I mean, hey, I think you guys would love it too if people would write more fanfic. Would be nice.
Yeah, fan art, whatever. The Book of Weapons has 3 of my favorite characters that I got to work on coming up, and if anybody ever draws them, I will die of happiness.
Okay, you have to at least name drop one of them.
There's some twins, and there's the person who's teaching them how to become hunters. So, yeah.
Anyone who's good with drawing,
You could draw that.
try it.
That'd be really fun.
And what is the favorite, what is your favorite bit of lore that you both worked on of the whole game so far? I mean,
my god.
it's challenging. Maybe like
Yeah,
a top
'cause they're
3
so-
even, but like,
I mean, it's just to take a little thing, it's really, really fun to make up weapon names. And yeah, I really enjoy that process where it's like, okay, these are the weapons we're gonna make, and we need, with the legendaries, we wanna make these, and we need names for them, and they need to be connected to lore, and that whole process I find really, really fun.
Yeah, like the upcoming legendary characters I think is really, really, really nice to work on, and then kind of talk to the character artists and kind of work that out, who these are, where they're coming from. That's really kicking in my character creation fun.
Oh, so fun.
What else is it's really satisfying whenever you have an idea and then you see that materialize. Because I'm not a very good artist or anything, so if someone makes something that you've had a visual concept for, it's just amazing. It's just I think the snakeskin and the gun was something, and that was probably something which changed a lot over the development of this character, which is in the Book of Weapons. And then I think in the end that's pretty nice.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just I've been a writer in other industries for a long time, and writing is always really it's a lonely task. You're always alone at your desk.
I mean, you have a lot of plants to keep you company.
No. But writing
She
for
sits
games.
very far away from us.
My point is, writing for games though, you have a shared world. So the actual art of writing, you're sitting there writing by yourself. You're kind of type with someone together, but. Because there's so many people involved in building this world, there's a really cool team aspect to it that I've never had in any other kind of writing, and it's the best. I really love it. Love that teamwork. But James and I each come up with our own storylines, and write them by ourselves, but then we meet up and are like,
Yeah.
so do you have somebody I could kill, or like if I have this character, like how can we make them interact? And it's just like a really
Yeah.
interesting process that's so much fun.
So do you,
Yeah.
because you guys make your characters, like, it doesn't happen that if you come up with a character, you are the main person that mainly still writes for it, or does it also sometimes happen that, for example, James comes up with a character and you continue on that story, or how does that go?
I think we mainly stick to writing the ones we've created, but I think each written each other's characters
I mean, I think
as well.
yeah, definitely. Like, I think we've both gone over each other's stuff and refined it, and I think it's important to have someone who knows everything, because then if you're like, oh, I want to change this, and you're like, well, actually, in this thing,
Actually, on page 367, here's this, so that's not gonna fly.
Yeah, so I think just from a purely workflow point of view, that's important to kind of have oversight over your own thing. But I think from a writing perspective, we both written parts or do a feedback on it, and then be like, hey, why don't you add this line here, and then that makes it in. So yeah, that's really nice. I think it can be kind of intimidating to purely do something on your own. I think if you're working, it's really great to collaborate with someone, because you also learn what your own voice is in that regard, because you have a point of comparison. And then I think it's interesting if you're reading something and you're like, did I write that, did someone else write that? And I think a big part of being a good writer is being able to write in other people's voices too.
The flexibility.
Yeah, because sometimes you do stuff and everything just you have a clear idea in mind of who someone is and their education level, their experience, their outlook on the world, and you do it, and as it goes along the page, you're like, this is the same as the last 4 people, and then you kind of have to edit it and go back through, and don't revert into your natural way of speaking or
holding
writing.
a tone over a length of time.
I mean, I do think that
difficult.
would be difficult. It's whenever I think about playing video games and making a character, I often make similar characters, or even when playing D&D, they all have something in the end in common, because there's something that you have from your personal, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely challenging. So what are, for example, maybe characteristics that are personal to your writing style? Do you have something that you recognize, something that you always like to put in a sense that you bring from yourself?
A lot of my American characters sometimes end up speaking British English.
Yeah, I'm like, James,
You just don't
take
get
that out. That's British. What is this?
Yeah, for sure.
That's true, but I don't think very much, because
Yeah.
I mean, I can say it for you because I'm observing your writing from the outside, and you could probably say better about me, but because we've written so many found documents that are in different styles, you have to be able to change your style for each one, or at least try. I guess that's another thing the audience will tell how successful we were at that, but it's really important with this kind of writing to be able to switch between those styles. And I find I don't know how you do it, but if I need to write a certain kind of thing, I'll read a bunch of stuff that's in a similar style before, and then it's easy to kind of do hand in glove, and you start out almost satire. I often start out accidentally writing satires, and then I have to go back.
I mean, it's much easier to write a newspaper and a journal in their respective styles, but if you have 2 journals, then it's much harder to
make them seem sound different.
Yeah, and I think it's just very subtle word choice and stuff. Sometimes they end up having the same thing, and then you go back through and it's would he say received or would he say get?
There's so much little.
Yeah, but that's a lot to think about, for sure. And I'm curious, because how much information, because obviously a lot of it is on the internet, but you guys also have physical books and files together, somewhere here that how big is that collection?
I've got a few books on my desk. I mean, there's so many old books that are available on the internet. James mentioned archive.org, and there's some really great newspaper archives. So most of the stuff you need is online, but I have quite a few books about weapons of the time. I've printed out a large chunk of the records of the Louisiana asylum at Jackson that I just have, where it just goes through patient name, why they were admitted, and stuff like that, and it just Yeah, I guess I have a weird collection of them. I have like a lot of dictionaries. There's the ones that I always get in paper. I don't know, you're less of your desk at least isn't covered in books.
Yeah, I think a lot of PDFs maybe.
Yeah, like the new age
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
The new age old media. And do you then also have dictionaries from like the 1800s or something?
I have been looking for one for quite a while. I haven't found one. I have a lot of weird kind of like slang dictionaries. I do have a historic slang dictionary, but I really want like an actual dictionary for 1895.
Yeah.
That would be really cool. But yeah, I kind of collect like dictionaries that are themed, like, you know, I don't know, yeah, so Victorian slang or like
Victorian?
it's pretty ridiculous, but it's actually fun to sit there and read them because you're just like, what? Like what?
So like,
What
are there a
does
lot
this
of things
mean?
that you don't understand then, or if it's
Yeah, there's stuff that I mean, or there's words that we use today that are used differently. Back then, I can't think of an example. I should have prepared some, but it's just really amusing to see how language has changed over time.
Yeah, I can imagine because like they obviously still spoke English, but there must be in those 200 years must be a lot of change then.
Yeah, different slang for sure.
Yeah, you pick me up on a lot of like word etymologies that you take for granted, and then it's like
I'm
you
I'm
learn a lot
constantly
about
looking
when-
up words to see
Yeah.
when they came into usage because it's really easy to like use some turn of phrase that we use that references something that was invented in like 1940 and it's like, I can't use that word, it didn't exist yet. Like, I don't know, these are the weird details that we spend a lot of time thinking about.
It's actually funny. There's this show on Netflix called Norseman, and it's set in like year 300 Vikings, but then they do everything in modern speak. So like all the jokes and like everything they say, and like the sayings are based on like modern sayings.
Okay.
It's actually really interesting how different that comes over. It's really funny actually.
Oh, cool.
I can't recommend it. Kind of casual advertisement, but it's really interesting like how what sayings like how much impact that has on a story and a setting in general. Like if you put like modern speech in an old setting or like the old speech in a modern setting. But what, for example, do we like have specific examples that you can come up with that we have in like the Book of Monsters or something, like specific sayings? or-
Phrasing. I mean, we try to just slip things
Yeah.
in here and there that we learn.
And that's a
Can you
really
think of an
difficult
example?
question
Yeah.
to think of like a specific example in that regard.
Yeah, I
Especially
don't know.
because like
Yeah,
our
yeah.
most recent task has been more technical than like we finished writing all this stuff a while ago and now we're doing the more technical side of it. So
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of like individual sentences in my mind right now.
Yeah, I thought maybe there's like specific words that they
But
say.
there was a lot of rogue capitalization at the time. Like people loved to capitalize all sorts of stuff, and then you face the question of you're writing a like fake historical text.
Mhm.
Do you copy that and it's gonna look wrong to the reader? Like there's a really fine line
Yeah.
between looking wrong and seeming authentic, which is I found that to be quite a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. People then were absurd. And like, if you try and just copy that, like we even got feedback and we were like, this is ridiculous.
It's like
And it's like, that's real.
that one's real, guys. That happens a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah,
the truth being stranger than fiction
definitely.
phrase definitely holds up.
Yeah, I think people expect it to be kind of serious and Victorian,
Mm-hmm.
and people were pretty silly then.
Yeah, when you read the newspapers, they
Yeah.
were really silly. Like the thing, I
They
don't
just
know.
had the
Yeah.
local drunk write some stuff down.
It seems like it's.
So what was like before that? People can start already slowly asking questions, lore specific questions. What was then? You already said that's challenging. But like, what are some of the bigger challenges in writing lore or adding lore to the game? Or
Do you want to start, or I mean, there's plenty. There's
I have
plenty.
a list.
I mean, remembering all your passwords is a
That's why you have these,
challenge.
beautiful add-ons that you can just add to
Yeah,
your
that's
phone.
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
For
First
somebody
you-
who just uses PDFs, that's kind of behind.
Yeah, I guess more seriously, pretty open-ended scope in a way. Like you don't wanna write yourself into a corner.
Mhm.
You wanna be adaptable, but you also wanna flesh it out with detail. That's always intention of like, do we wanna are we gonna add another boss, or do we wanna make it so that like the 3 bosses are significant? Like we were talking because we had duos for a long time, and we were like, is duos significant to the lore? or is it like, do we want to have it so you can go in so solos or pairs or
Yeah.
triples, and all of this stuff. Like you look at other games, and some of this is you know, kind of knowing your boundaries enables you to like add emphasis and detail, and it's always tough to kind of look into the future and think like, okay, this is fixed, we can like emphasize this, we can draw attention to this, but this on the other hand is like liable to change, and you know, we don't want to block ourselves, because the worst thing is if someone comes to you with like a really cool idea and you're like, well, that's not possible because of this and this and this. So yeah, that tension is like hard to negotiate.
That was, yeah, and we did, as you know, a whole talk about this at GDD, like the challenges of writing lore during early access, because some things are bound to change. You know they're going to change.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you have to find a way to still write your awesome story, like even though things are changing and you maybe you're going to have to rewrite a bunch of stuff.
What was the thing you had to rewrite the most for?
Oh geez, I don't know. It was more always like details, but it was often. Can you think of an example?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had maybe a version of the Book of Monsters, and we looked at it and we were like, does this really give away enough of the origins?
That's
you know?
true. Yeah, we had
And
to
then
really change that.
we were like just looking at this from the perspective of like people want some details about the origins and like what this thing is. So we were kind of reviewing that a lot in view of the community feedback we were getting, because we were like, is this satisfying that itch, you know, that people want for like some details and stuff. Yes, that was one. The Book of Weapons as well, I think we were also looking at that more and more from the perspective of like, okay, who are the hunters, how do they get in this situation, because one of the big expectations people have is like everyone's working together and it's like a homogenous group versus evil, and we were like, well, that's not true. So why did things break down? Like, who are the key figures, what are the key events? And then we were moving more and more into that detail of like telling the specific thing. So yeah, I think in view of that, like it's very much, I mean, that was maybe more of like an editing and a narrowing process.
Yeah.
In order to really bring that out and emphasize it, and then make sure that the relations are clear. But I think that was also really satisfying because it evolves over time, and then you figure out exactly what you want to do with the document, and then you are able to get it doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Early access at least gives you the chance to continue to shape things as you see as you see what people think. Usually you release it and then you hear everybody's thoughts and that's it.
Yeah.
At least we could still
adjust things. Yeah.
that was quite cool.
Yeah, that must be a quite big difference if you were to compare to like just a finished game and then done. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me see. So we can have some questions. Could you potentially move the YouTube chat to the other side so it's like closer to me in a sense, like a little bit? Okay, yeah. Oh, no.
Stupid Chrome.
Yeah. Let me see. So obviously keep the chat questions only related to lore because otherwise we will not answer them today. Let me see. Can you tell us if the vonage in the current 1.0 can be deciphered from in-game hints? What is a voynage? Do you guys know? I'm
Voynage
personally
script,
not
yeah.
know that. Okay.
I believe that there are people who have decoded it on the Discord.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
reveal how to decode it here, but that's one of the
Yeah,
puzzles
that's
that can be
the
solved.
secret language of the hunters that they used to communicate with each other. And yeah, I guess it was inspired by Niche, but it's also its own thing.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
made our own cipher.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's definitely a decoding of some of the times we've used it, and yeah.
Yeah, that would be it. Stop by
Okay.
the Discord lore channel, I guess.
Is the
Yeah.
camera's freezing again?
Oh no.
Things are freezing.
What did we do to fix it last time?
We just properties and then turn it on and off. That sounds sort of stupid, but deactivate, activate. We see here inspiration for the assassin. Not sure.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
that question should go to someone who's not here because that concept didn't come from us. That came from some of the character and the concept guys. So
Yeah, because the character, the assassin, like the idea for the assassin has been around for quite some time. I think we had like a
Exactly.
poster, not here, but the poster that we've also released like back in the day. I already saw it. I was like, oh
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
Artem was involved very early on, if he's been on stream. I mean, if you're interested in knowing more about the Assassin, you can look on our blog. When the Assassin first was added to the game,
Yeah.
we wrote a whole bunch of stuff about the creation process, that we talked, interviews with all those guys who were there at the beginning,
Mhm.
so...
Yeah.
Like, the Assassin also changed quite a lot over that time.
Yeah, I feel like-
but the very original idea did not come from us.
yeah. The painter guy in Lost in Delta is an Easter egg. So yeah, think about it. Yeah, red shirt. Well, it actually has the lore in the description of the hunter.
Exactly. Read that.
Exactly.
Can we talk about a nano suit?
Oh my god.
Goodness.
People are curious to know, where did the hunters get their magic from? Did we describe some of that in the lore, or?
We address
Yeah.
that question. If it's a question about maybe dark sight, I
Yeah.
assume that's something that we address in the book
Yeah.
of weapons.
Yeah, that's in that.
So get
Yeah.
on the locking.
Yeah. Let me see. Someone wants to know what happens after Hunter retires. I mean, what happens to you if you retire?
They
Yeah, some of them
yeah.
move to the sea.
Yeah.
Some go to Florida,
Yeah, nice farm upstate. Yeah.
where the alligators are,
Yeah.
not in the Louisiana swamps before. No.
I'm trying to remember though, because we actually put some thought into this, and I remember researching when retirement, like as a concept,
Mhm.
became a thing. And now I can't remember what the date was, but it was not far off from the time of the game when people first decided, like,
I need
when
a
you get
break.
old, you should stop working, like, because, yeah, before that, people just kept on, right, until they fell over.
Yeah.
So,
It was actually interesting because, like, during last developer live stream, we were thinking, because people were suggesting like things like dog tags, and they were like, when did dog tags actually get invented? But they were like right after also like the time period of the game, so it's like it could make sense, but it's a bit late. Yeah. Let me see. What other lore questions do you guys have? Is the assassin sentient or a puppet of the sculptor?
I think that's answered in the books. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like answered in a really direct
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
but I think that
yeah.
answer is absolutely in the books.
I mean, I think there
Mhm.
was someone who became the assassin, and
Oh, what is
yeah, that uses, I guess, some of his abilities, but whether or not that consciousness is still there.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Someone was curious, why was the Voynich script chosen? Do the contents of the manuscript relate to Hunt's lore, or is it just intended to be a pretty coded script?
Well, okay, so the Voynich manuscript, for anyone who doesn't know about it, is an actual manuscript that no one has ever decoded. Shoot, what's the year on it? Do you remember?
The Voynich thing.
The Voynich manuscript. I can't remember the
Yeah.
year that it's been dated to, but the point is, no one knows what it says. It's a really cool book with all this weird writing in it and all these really weird pictures. It kind of just,
Mhm.
like if aliens were gonna leave encyclopedia of their planet, you would
Yeah.
feel like it would look kind of like this. So,
And what
It's-
region did it came from? Because it was something like Hawaii, right? Or did I misremember?
I don't know, I thought it was
Italy.
your, what's
Yeah, I
that?
thought it was Italy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think
Oh,
it's
okay.
European.
Then I totally
European
remember
version.
that. I remember like looking it up once, and I thought, I don't know, maybe just like Hawaiian pineapples.
But the point is that there's this book for like a certain kind of like sci-fi fantasy history nerd has become to be like a symbol of like a sense of wonder. Like you look at
Mhm.
this book and you're just like, what is it? And like people love to speculate. Like I love this book. I have it like kind of almost on an altar in my house next to Codex Seraphinius, which is an actual fictional book that kind of copies it. But anyway, it's just a really cool mental puzzle. Like you can look through it and it just really sparks the imagination, and that sense of mystery and wonder was, I think, why we chose the script to use in some of our stuff, because it just like that's the feeling that
Does it
we
have
really
images
want
as well, or
to. Yeah, it
is
has
it- oh, okay.
illustrations as well. I'll bring it in tomorrow.
I'm
Show it
actually
to you.
curious. I'm actually curious to see now. I'm like, what is this book?
Every like couple of years, there's an article about how someone has decoded it, and I get really excited, and then it turns out they haven't. But then like maybe it's cooler that it's never
That
been
is not.
decoded.
Yeah, that's actually valid. Let me
But yeah.
see. Who's Willie MCD?
Oh no, that question is following us.
No.
Why does he need to put his name on every locker? You know, I think we should ask him.
Yeah.
He's just a vandal, that Willie. Yeah, what other questions have we got? Oh, thank you. Someone said 15th century for the Voynich manuscript. Thank you.
That
I
is
forgot.
that is indeed pretty old. A lot of things writing so as far as from the hunters' perspectives were the secondary sources newspaper hunters would have read. Is that intentional or to connect with the player's experience?
Yeah, I guess 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think we were always thinking about this from the perspective of the hunters, and they're not really knowing the whole thing which is going on. A lot of them are just bought in. So yeah, the information they have is like as accessible as it would be. And we also wanted, it wouldn't make sense to us to have like a central hero and then be the story about their journey, because it's a multiplayer game. So having it come in from lots of directions and lots of different ways to access it was like one of the core things which we were addressing it, and this is also why we went for like this archive format, and why we want to keep that up in the future.
Yeah, because someone already asked, like, why did you guys decide to go to write the Book of Monsters in letters and diary entries?
Yeah.
Same reason. Found documents.
Um,
Let's see. Are the rest of the world aware of the monsters in Louisiana? I would say most of them are not.
Yeah, some people.
There are pockets of people who are, but
other hunters.
it's not like headlines in every newspaper around.
Yeah, I mean, again, in the time as well, like there's a little bit of cover-up going on, and then that goes a long way before smartphones. I mean, no one really knows what's going on these days.
It took a lot longer
Yeah.
for information to travel at the time as well, which really changed.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If Nicole let's take the stocks, does James do the humming?
Did you do any of the
No,
humming?
I didn't do the
Because
humming.
quite a few
Yeah.
people did the humming around the office. I know
Yeah.
that the audio guys come up with that song, and they gathered a bunch of people to record the humming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could have.
I mean, I recorded that rap, which is definitely going to come out soon.
Yeah.
We're just waiting on
I
that.
can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
He's hidden it even for me.
Yeah, I mean, I keep sending it, and like the email must be going into a spam. I don't know.
Okay, so before the question disappears, all the references in the book. Oh, can you scroll down the YouTube chat a little bit back? I just missed it. All of the references in the book seem like they're made after whatever the hunters are experiencing. Is the lore ranking or taking, I think, place after the game that we play?
Well, because they're found documents, some of them are from exactly that time, like journals, newspapers, but I'm guessing this person maybe is talking about the intros, which are kind of written, at least the intros in the Book of Monsters are written by someone who's collected those documents and is kind of analyzing them a little bit.
Yeah. It's like vague 20th century is where a lot of this stuff is being compiled, because we're also, we don't want to restrict ourselves from going into some similar time areas in the future.
Yeah.
So the perspective that all of this is gathered on is like after the event, and it's a few occultists who are trying to piece together what really happened. So they're also gathering in these documents, and they have, they're like a lot of the texts are dime novels which are published, and they're kind of bringing this in line with other journals that they found, and they're kind of like, well, look at this journal which was produced, and this is like talking about the same stuff as this story, and so on. So yeah, it's a bit of a conspiracy.
So fun.
For both J-Dog and Nicolette, can you sneak some developer Easter eggs in the lore that represent you as people?
I am not answering that question.
I have a feeling that he is internal. Do we know who this person is?
I have a guess of who
It's
that is,
Krista.
but it's but he's not here. Yeah, I've stuck I've stuck all sorts of shit in. I mean, I've written like thousands and thousands of words. I mean, on the one hand, there's also like the fact that like every character you write has some of you in them. So like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But some of it is also just wild imaginings.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's the vaporizing inhaler, right?
Oh shit! Right.
I think that's because
Can we-
I don't like vapes.
Wait, what?
So like quite a while ago, also near the beginning, what did we use that for?
It was in the case study.
It was in the yeah. There was an advertisement for a medicine to like cure the common cold,
Yeah.
and the doctor on it was basically James.
Yeah, and I think
It was a tribute to
because
him at least.
I think it was because I was saying I thought vapes were dumb, so they were trolling me.
I mean, sure. Let me see. Why is it that only particular people are infected?
Infected. Where's the question?
It's in a calling pigeon. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Do you mean?
Oh, area. Oh, why is it that only particular areas are infected? Sorry, I thought maybe because like you have the hunters that are fine with wider ones, like.
Well, I think you'd have to maybe read some of the book and find out how it's spreading to answer that question. I would say we touch on that issue in the book, so I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a proximity thing with it. I mean, there's like the central thing which is there, and then it's within this space which is able to affect its consciousness. But yeah, I guess it's not a worldwide thing, and then the hunters have their own way of ensuring that they're not under the effect of it, but then that's also
A bit.
yeah, that's also in the book for
Yeah.
people to discover.
I was about to like
Yeah.
attack you and stop you
Yeah,
from
yeah.
talking. Don't say it. Don't tell them.
Yeah.
It's all through the books and not through cutscenes. At the moment,
Yeah.
we have planned our books. Yeah,
Yeah, we don't. I don't think
Yeah.
we're getting cutscenes like ever in the game, at least.
that's not on the roadmap.
Not on the roadmap. No plans for it, and we don't want the lore to be represented in your face type, where you just see it rather than like looking for it. Well, I mean, technically reading is also like.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
the lore's kind of meant to be like a bit of a like extra playground.
Yeah.
For like you like this world, you like what's happening in it. Like here's some weird shit to think about that could be happening there, and like think about your own stuff, and like just to spark that side of the game for
Yeah,
those who want it,
exactly.
but it's not required.
The higher tier hunters have more tattoos, many of which are related to voodoo symbols. Is it just to indicate that these hunters have survived longer, or do these tattoos have more superstitious or spiritual power/value? Do
Do we want to answer that?
Well, yeah, I think they have survived longer.
Obviously, they've had time to get all these
They're
tattoos.
older. Yeah.
But I mean, thinking
Yeah.
of some of the legendary hunters in my head, a lot of the tattoos have like specific background stories to them. It's not that easy to answer that question like with a blanket answer.
Whether or not they give power, whether that's how like power operates in the world, I would probably veer away from.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
they
whether
believe
people
it
think
does.
that it
Yeah.
does, yeah.
Are we going to see conflict between the sculptor and other entities from the other side, or just the sculptor versus the American Hunter Association?
I think you should read the Book of Weapons.
Answered. Yeah, I'm curious how many people have unlocked most of the Book of Weapons yet. Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure what they've had it for.
I mean, I have.
Yeah, I have too.
How did
With
you
the,
do that?
with the way that we unlock everything,
Yeah,
so we
the
can
debug
test it.
Yeah.
Let's do like 2 or 3 more questions. How public and well known is the American Hunter Association known to the rest of the world?
Pretty unknown. The Hunters Association is a front, and it's like an American front. I think it's not really organized, definitely on like a world level. I think it's a lot of fronts and a lot of more independent movements, which are kind of sometimes operating with this, sometimes not. I think it's quite fractured in this regard, and I think as well that's what we wanted to show with the Book of Weapons. Yeah.
It seems to me that the Book of Weapons has a lot of information, guys.
It's pretty big.
Let me see. Yeah, was there a particular part of the lore that really felt was the most interesting to you both? An area that you really enjoyed getting stuck into and working on?
Oh gosh, I mean, like I have favorite pieces like that James has written where every time, like, because we've proofed this stuff many times, so, and then there's certain ones where like every time I read them I have to write James and be like, I love this one. But yeah, it's like kind of different things at different times, I guess. What, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I think really seeing the twin story evolve was really cool, and yeah, I don't want to give it away, but then that kind of over time moved into the center, and that was really interesting. Other areas which we got stuck into, yeah.
I don't know, like every part you're writing, you're like really obsessed with it while you're working on it, and then you move on to the next thing, and then it's you're like, oh, that other thing, you're like, I guess that was okay, but I'm really into this one now, and so you move, kind of move
but like
through
something
it.
that maybe like stuck a little bit.
There's a moth in here, guys.
Oh,
shit!
no!
That's not a good sign.
Anyway, but yeah, anything that specifically stuck for a while, like I was thinking about this still when I was in bed with my wife, or I don't know.
I don't know, like I do a lot of writing and brainstorming when I'm like moving, so like I remember
moving as in
like walking or bicycling.
Okay, I was about to say, because like moving can also be like, how often do you move house?
I remember like one of the first things that I wrote after I joined the team, I dictated into my phone while bicycling like down the river in Frankfurt, because I was like, oh, this is cool. And moments like that are always really, really exciting. There's like, I don't know, you get really lost in
Eureka!
it. Yeah. Not really. It's.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of my characters which really kind of came from nothing, and then for a while they were kind of, and then you work on them a bit, and then they kind of start to find their own. Like I think Glanton and Snakeskin were really some people who I became really like interested in and really enjoyed coming back to, and that's, I guess, not the same for everyone. In this story, like there are some people who just don't grab you, or you don't get that same like interest in, and they start to feel less real.
That's like kind of a hard question.
That's sorry.
guys.
What was the first thing that you guys came up with when you started working on it? Like, what was the first thing you worked on, or was?
One of the things that I wrote for my writing test to join narrative design turned out to be lyrics for Devil in the Churchyard. And that was written to be like, okay, found document, they found some old like children's poem or like song lyrics that were in some archive, and later when they needed a song for that video, I pulled that back up and was like, here's a melody that we got it, like
Yeah, because you also write all the songs, right? Is that just you, or do you guys both, do you also like work on the songs in a sense?
I've done all the lyrics and melodies for the songs.
Yeah, I'm not involved in that. Can't claim any credit.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably a topic for a whole nother stream.
Yeah.
How all that stuff happened.
And what was the first thing you worked on?
I think the very first thing I did was like a draft for the Book of Weapons, and like starting to think about how we can kind of do this, and like what's a reasonable length for the text, and what can make it interesting, and how can we evolve it. And I think none of that is in the game anymore. Like that has all been seriously like improved on, maybe. But that's, I think, the first thing I remember was putting some like first text together, and maybe a couple of those ideas made it forward. But yeah, I think it's a lot of turning over and trying to figure out what the tone is. It's really,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. With
Yeah.
you're throwing so much stuff away, the first stuff.
Yeah.
You just build on it.
Let me see if there's one more question. Why killing dogs and horses in the game? Should we call PETA?
Oh.
1895 or 1885
Yeah.
PETA? Yes.
I mean, I think there was already like the Society for the Prevention of Animal Cruelty in this
There
time.
was, yeah, we looked.
Yeah.
We looked
Oh,
up.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were active at the time,
I
but
mean, all
hey,
I can
animals
s-
are susceptible to these crazy
Yeah, I mean,
diseases
all I
as
can
well.
say is that if you kill animals, then that's on you. You know, like I'm not responsible for that. Yeah.
You mean if players go and
Yeah.
attack a
Yeah.
poor dying horse
Yeah.
in one of the compounds?
Yeah, it's just gonna scream for a little bit.
I mean, I do think that you
Yeah.
at least put the horses out of their misery.
Oh god.
Because the horses are already like half dead.
They're so
Yeah,
sad.
no one has
It's really
figured
sad.
out how to ride it yet, which is crazy.
Let me see. Anything.
What would be the most fun boss to write for next? We can't answer that question
Yeah.
without spoilering everything.
I see that Sam tried a med kit on the horse. That is very sweet.
Really? Did it?
But then
You'll get there yet. Get that vet achievement.
Let me see. I've seen common themes between Hunt and Bloodborne, and so far as human nature, corruption of the self, stagnation, the idea of the Hunt as sort of comic ritual. Care to elaborate?
I'd say those are pretty archetypical themes throughout all of literature, so
Yeah.
they're gonna pop up quite often.
Yeah, I think the only time I played Bloodborne was watching my flatmate. But yeah, I guess it has this similar like 19th century
Mhm.
setting.
Yeah, it's the same, like,
very
setting,
gothic.
yeah.
And I guess like you can't help but be influenced by gothic because it's also the era when a lot of like this is when like psychology became created because people start to be aware that there are like some unconscious forces and stuff. So I think this is like the themes of Dracula and Frankenstein and also more American specific stuff. So yeah, I think it's all there, and if you're going into that era, it's going to be stuff that you pull out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's also interesting to imagine because like a lot of people always ask like, yeah, oh, we want the werewolf and we want this and we want that. It's like a lot of the things that are very stereotypical for certain like, I mean, Dracula, for example, is super popular, or vampires in general, or like werewolves in general, that we on purpose try to get something that's more unique and more, you know, not so this is seen everywhere else. And I think that's really good. And I think, I mean, obviously you guys are very big contributors to that in the first place. Because you guys might be the first start of inspiration in that sense. Because, like, do you draw from, like, for example, like, with some of the monsters, obviously, like, does that come more from, like, just a lore side of things, or just from the design, like, or concept art, rather?
I think I joined the team after the current monsters had all already been designed, so I don't know if you can speak to that.
I mean, I think a lot of it comes from a game design perspective when you want to have something which is, you know, bulkier or something which is a different gameplay challenge, and then a lot of the physical features evolve from that. And then, I mean, in the lore, we also have the concept that the monster is like a sculptor, which is like designing things according to its aims in a way. So I think those two things are quite aligned. Like,
Yeah.
if it has a function in one, then it's also mirrored in the other. Like, we didn't want to have a situation where we're like, you know, calling a duck a Tyrannosaurus Rex, because it's like, well, in the story,
Yeah.
that's actually a T-Rex, but it looks like a duck.
Yeah.
And I think that's some of the danger you have, where you get too caught up in an idea you have and it doesn't mirror the reality.
Mhm.
And you just have to say, you know what, like, this thing is a meathead, you know? It's like, it's a big, bulgy
But
thing
it
with
doesn't
leeches.
have a head. How can it be a meat head? No, I know what you mean.
You're right.
Oh, no.
What?
But like from a conceptual,
Yeah.
the question of how we concept things, like if we're talking about something new, we all sit down in a room together and all ideas just get thrown out, and everybody kind of puts in their 2 cents about like, well, that would work really well from my perspective, or this would, you know, everybody's kind of trying to find the thing that works best for all the different goals that you have for each thing, which is quite.
And I mean, obviously, character artists might even get to the same like inspiration that you guys have, because obviously, if you research like things from the past, it's not that they didn't research.
Oh yeah. Sharing research is excellent.
Well, I think that is for most of the questions. Obviously, I know you guys have more questions, and I'm sure there will be more on the Discord. They are both on the Discord as Hearthstone and Harn. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Actually, I never know.
Hawthorne, yeah.
Yeah.
Hawthorne and Harn?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess.
Hun, hun, and hun.
Double H.
But yeah, they'll there. Obviously, maybe in the future we can do another Q&A. Maybe this time on Reddit's a bit easier.
Yeah.
Discord, because it's really fast. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your time
Thanks
and
for
being
having us.
here and talking about the lore. It was long waited, but I think people really enjoyed it. So thank you
Yeah.
again, and thank you chat for watching. We'll see you guys next time, and definitely check out the Book of Weapons because, as you heard here today, there is a lot of lore in that thing. So go play the game and let us know. So thank you. Have a good night. Bye.